The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
The Parliament discussed for the first reading and adopted the draft law on tourism with 79 votes. The draft regulates the issues related to the state policy on the tourism sphere, legal regulation of touristic activity, management of the touristic areas, registration of the travel subjects, contracts on the tour package and combined services, protection of insolvency, high-risk tourist activity, as well as the regulation of the activity of the guides, time distribution, long breaks, resale and exchange agreements, as well as the enforcement of the legislation on tourism. The National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat, published a report on water supply enterprises. Referring to survey results in 2022, 27 enterprises were involved in water supply activities in Georgia. The volume of water provided to households amounted to 288 million cubic meters, which is 1% lower compared to 2021. As of December 31, 2022, the number of people connected to the water supply industry amounted to 2.67 million, which is around 72%, which is in its turn 1.6% higher compared to 2021. The volume of loans issued by commercial banks, excluding interbank loans, in May 2023 increased by 959.72 million lari, or by 2.14% compared to the previous months. The exchange rate effect excluded increased by 0.88% and constituted around 46 billion lari by the end of May 2023. The volume of loans in national currency increased by 286 million lari, which is around 1.14%, and the volume of loans in foreign currency increased by around 674 million lari, or by 3.41% in the same period. The exchange rate effect excluded increased by 0.55%. In Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, air pollution levels exceed international standards, significantly surpassing other cities in the region. An innovative study conducted by the World Bank provides new evidence that air pollution adversely affects the health, labor productivity, and economic outcomes of Tbilisi's residents. This research demonstrates that the impact of air pollution is not evenly distributed, with poorer and less educated households more exposed to air pollution and having lower adaptive capacity. As such, the findings of the World Bank study emphasize the importance of considering socioeconomic impacts when designing pollution reduction policies. It also shows that better knowledge of the effects of air pollution and access to monitoring devices, as well as protective measures, are likely to help households in Tbilisi take adaptive actions in the short term. In the medium term, decreasing emissions from transportation and regulating industrial emissions should be considered a priority for creating a more sustainable, livable Tbilisi. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Gvangilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up Business and Economics Week for you. The EU sanctions envoy, Mr. David O'Sullivan, arrived in Tbilisi on June 26 for a two-day visit to discuss with the Georgian authorities issues of common interest, notably sanctions and their effective implementation. The objective of this visit was to open a direct channel of communication and establish a cooperative dialogue for the future. During the visit, meetings were held with Prime Minister Garibashvili, Foreign Minister Darchiashvili, Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Economy Davitashvili, Minister of Finance Khotishvili, Acting Governor of the National Bank Turnava, and Prosecutor General Shotadze. David O'Sullivan also met representatives of the business community. This was a joint visit with Ambassador James O'Brien, head of the Office of Sanctions Coordination, U.S. Department of State, and Mr. Kumar Iyer, Director General, Economic Science and Technology at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, UK government.
I was here, as you know, jointly with our US and UK colleagues, visiting the Georgian authorities. I think it's probably useful just to give you the general context. I think you know it. Since Russia's illegal, full-scale and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, the international community has put in place an unprecedented level of sanctions. The purpose of these sanctions is to undermine Russia's ability to wage this war, to deprive the Russian government of the revenue to wage this war, and to impose a heavy economic cost on Russia generally for this brutal and unprovoked war which they are now waging. We are particularly looking now at the question of possible circumvention of our sanctions, and in particular we are focused on 38 battlefield products which are found on the battlefield by the Ukrainians and which are used to make Russian weapons more lethal, smarter and more deadly. And we are particularly concerned if there is any circumvention of the sanctions on these products. This has led us to visit a range of countries in the last few months, sometimes together, sometimes separately, and we found ourselves in the last 2 days here in Georgia. I have to say that Georgia, of course, is not implementing these sanctions. We are perhaps disappointed that that is not the case. As a country which has aspirations to be a member of the European Union, we would ultimately like a high degree of alignment also on foreign policy. But we also understand the very specific situation in which Georgia finds itself, both economically, in terms of geography, and in terms of close contacts with Russia in many ways. So we understand that they are not going to implement our sanctions. But I have to say that what we have seen over the last 2 days has confirmed to us that the Georgian authorities are taking very seriously the issue of not allowing this country to be used as a platform for circumvention. And they have put in place significant measures of controlling the export of possible export from Georgia of the most sensitive 38 products. And the same is true across financial sanctions, where they have put in place very close vigilance. And we are frankly impressed with the measures which they have taken. I want to make it clear that we come here in a spirit of partnership and cooperation, particularly from the European Union. We have an important bilateral agenda between Georgia and the European Union, whom we hope at some day to welcome as a member of the European Union. And this issue of sanctions, which is going to be with us, frankly, for probably quite a long time, we have to avoid that this becomes an irritant or an obstacle to the development of our closer bilateral relations. I'm happy to say that what we've seen over the last few days leads me to conclude that for the moment that is absolutely not the case, and I see no reason why that should change. So this has been a very useful visit, very productive, and as I say, we leave with a generally very positive impression of the manner in which the Georgian authorities are making sure that this country is not used as a platform for circumvention of European Union sanctions.
Sebastian Molinius, Regional Director of the World Bank for the South Caucasus, who is ending his 4-year tenure at the end of June 2023. Sebastian Molinius is the World Bank Regional Director for the South Caucasus effective July 1st, 2019, where he is responsible for developing the World Bank's country strategies, managing the portfolio of lending advisory and convening services, coordinating with development partners, and engaging with other key shareholders and stakeholders on economic growth and poverty reductions in the region. Sebastian joined the International Finance Corporation in 2002, where he managed corporate governance reform programs in Russia and across the Middle East and North Africa region, based in Moscow and then Cairo. In 2008, he joined the World Bank in Washington as a senior operations officer responsible for financial and private sector development, and then became a practice manager Manager for the Capital Markets Global Practice in 2012. Sebastian was appointed as Director to the Finance and Markets Global Practice in 2014, and in 2018 became the Director for the Finance, Competitiveness and Innovation Global Practice. Prior to joining the World Bank Group, he worked at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in the Financial, Fiscal and Enterprise Affairs Division. Sebastian Molyneux shared a farewell video message.
Gaman Joba, dear friends and dear colleagues. I've done many videos, interviews, and media appearances these past 4 years here in Georgia. However, today is probably one of the most difficult appearances that I have to do. Why? Because I have to say goodbye. Nachvamdis. It is really a bittersweet moment, both for my family and myself. Sweet, because we will be able to return to Washington, to our home, see old friends, and for me to work on an important agenda for the World Bank, which is to help the decarbonization of the transport sector, to help with the energy transition globally, to work on digital development and responsible mining, all exciting opportunities for the globe and for the World Bank to further engage and to reform and to move forward. Bitter, because my family and I will have to leave Georgia, which has truly grown dear to our heart over these past 4 years. If I look back, it has been truly an honor and a privilege for me to serve as country director here in Georgia over these 4 years. But really, I am part of a long-standing support program that the World Bank has provided to Georgia, starting off with the early 1990s, the decade of transition, from a plan to a market economy, to the 2000s and 2010s, the decades of foundations, building institutions, strong macroeconomic policy frameworks that have helped spur the growth that we see now and has served to half poverty over those years, to now this current decade that we're living in, which I have had the privilege of leading personally and working on tremendous challenges. The COVID period and all of the support that we provided to government. The connectivity agenda, both within Georgia in terms of digital, where we have a remarkable project called the Login Georgia Project to connect 5,000 villages and almost 500,000 people, to the connectivity agenda across the Middle Corridor and transport, building the East-West Highway and starting the East-West expansion, all the way to a connectivity agenda that will connect Georgia to Europe via an energy and a digital undersea cable. Now, these are all truly remarkable projects that we have been able to support government on, and perhaps in addition to also the human capital agenda, moving a bit away from infrastructure to supporting and investing in the people of Georgia and better education and health outcomes. Now, colleagues and friends, I am incredibly thankful, first and foremost, to the people of Georgia who have hosted me and have treated me like a son. Thank you. I'm incredibly grateful to our clients and our government counterparts who have been nothing but remarkable, who have been strong in their vision of reforming their country and moving it to a European future. I am incredibly grateful for the international financial institutions, the embassies, the development partners that we've been able to collaborate with these past 4 years. And finally, I'm incredibly grateful to both the private sector and civil society that really have served as a backbone of many of the reforms and have provided invaluable inputs and feedbacks into our programs. So in closure, again, I would like to, from my heart, thank you for having welcomed us like family. And we look forward to coming back and visiting and becoming part of this wonderful community and family again. Didi Madlova and Goma Jos Sakatvelos.
The U.S. Embassy in Tbilisi held a 4th of July celebration reception and a farewell to the Ambassador Kelly Degnan, who is stepping down. Business, media, CSO representatives, diplomats and high officials of Georgian government and parliament attended the reception and thanked Madam Ambassador for her good work in Georgia.
I'm sorry to say that this will be my last year hosting our Independence Day festivities as the U.S. Ambassador. It's been truly the greatest honor of my life to serve as ambassador to this amazing country. I will leave behind so many wonderful friends all over Georgia, many here this evening with us. I will always keep you and Sarkartvelo close to my heart. My outstanding deputy, Ryan Harris, is also leaving Georgia shortly. Ryan is an exceptional leader, and I could not have asked for a better partner in leading this dynamic mission. We are very fortunate to have Alan Purcell taking the reins from Ryan as Deputy Chief of Mission. Alan served in Georgia 15 years ago and is thrilled to be back. I also want to thank the other people on our leadership team who will be transitioning this summer for their hard work and dedication to helping Georgia become more secure, more prosperous, and more democratic.
These are the words that I want to tell you with all my heart today when we are celebrating what for every country is probably the most important day, the day when we celebrate independence and freedom, because that's when a country starts existing. That's when a country starts meeting its own history. And I want to congratulate you all on this very important day for the United States of America. It's a very important day for Georgia also, because we know, sometimes it might not look like that, but we know and understand and appreciate that America has stood by us as a friend for now over 30 years since our independence, and at times that have been very complex, to say the least, sometimes difficult, but always has America been on our side. It has been on our side in this very long march towards state building, which nobody knows when it's really finished. It's a process, but we have gotten support and steady support in that state building that is so important when you are an independent state. Economic independence, moving from socialist economy or non-economy to a real economy, that too has been where we have received American incredible support, and that is something that we know and we are not forgetting.
It is a great pleasure for me to be here today and extend my sincere congratulations to you and the American people in adoption of the Declaration of Independence of America. Throughout history, your country has proudly carried the torch of freedom and democracy, serving as a shining example for the world. The United States has persistently defended universal human rights and fundamental freedoms, supported development and progress, and promoted rule of law, leaving a lasting mark on the course of history. Georgia, a proud and freedom-loving nation, shares the same values and principles of freedom and democracy that form the foundation of our enduring friendship.
According to the Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, Levan Davitashvili, the application process for Anaklia Port has been completed, and information about the companies that have expressed interest in the construction of the port will be presented to the public in the near future. Regarding the expressions of interest declared in connection with Anaklia, the acceptance of applications officially ended on June 19. We confirm that we have received applications from several international companies. There are individual companies and there are associations and consortia of companies. Certain compliance criteria were required of companies, including information on financial stability and qualifications. Now the study and processing of this information is going on, and we will provide the public with information in the near future, including about the participating companies and their experience and all the information that we have requested from the companies. At this stage, unfortunately, we cannot share more information with the public. However, our agency is working intensively to process these applications, but I will tell you that several applications were received from important international companies, said Davitashvili. PMC Research published a report on Georgian economic climate in a survey of Georgian economists conducted in the second quarter of 2023. Georgia's present economic situation was assessed positively. Their assessment of the present economic situation has improved compared to both first quarter of 2023 as well as second quarter of 2022. The surveyed economists' predictions for Georgia's economic situation for the next 6 months are negative. Their expectations in this regard have slightly worsened even compared to the already negative predictions they made in the first quarter of 2023 and have significantly worsened compared to the positive expectations recorded in second quarter of 2022. In addition to assessing the current economic situation and gathering expectations for the next 6 months, the surveyed experts also made predictions with regard to Georgia's main economic indicators. According to the results of the survey, the expected real GDP growth for 2023 on average is 6.1%. Interestingly, this is more optimistic than the assessments made during the first quarter of 2023, when the surveyed economists expected real GDP growth of 5.5% for the year. The inflation rate year on year is expected to decrease for the next 6 months, with the expected rate of inflation for 2023 being 5.1%. The volume of exports is expected to increase in the coming 6 months compared to the corresponding period of the previous year, and the volume of imports is also expected to increase in the coming 6 months compared to the corresponding period of the previous year. The surveyed economists were asked to identify which factors they deem to currently pose the greatest threat to the Georgian economy. Russia's war in Ukraine was assessed as a very high threat to the Georgian economy by 47% of respondents, and as a high threat by 16%. Accordingly, in total, 63% of surveyed economists consider the war to represent a high or very high threat. Similarly, 63% of surveyed economists named skills mismatch, and the same percentage cited a labor shortage as being a high or very high threat. Rising cost of living problems were also highlighted as posing a high or very high threat to the Georgian economy by more than half of the surveyed economists, around 58%. Of the surveyed economists, 42% consider exchange rate fluctuations to pose a moderate threat to the Georgian economy. On the topic of the national currency, the economists were asked to assess the significance of certain factors in relation to the strengthening of the lari against US dollar during the second quarter of 2023. Lari has somewhat depreciated against the USD dollar in recent weeks, but remains stronger compared to the second quarter of 2022. About 90% of the surveyed economists assess immigrant inflows to have a high or very high impact on the strengthening of the lari during the second quarter of 2023. Almost 80% of respondents highlighted remittance inflows as the most significant factor influencing the strengthening of the national currency. 42% assessed this factor as having had a very high impact, and 37% stated it had a high impact. Tourist inflows were also highlighted as having had a high or very high impact by most of the surveyed economists, 74%. Meanwhile, increases in exports and foreign direct investment inflows were assessed as having either a low impact or no impact at all by the vast majority of experts, by 58% and 48% respectively. As more than 1 year has passed since Russia launched its war in Ukraine in February 2022, the surveyed economists were asked to assess the overall impact of the war on the Georgian economy. Interestingly, in the second quarter of 2022, when the war had just begun, the surveyed economists negatively assessed the present as well as future economic climate in Georgia, mainly on account of how they thought the war would impact Georgia. Nearly half, 47% of respondents, are uncertain about the overall impact the war in Ukraine had on the Georgian economy. Meanwhile, 36% 42% of the surveyed economists assess the impact of the war on the Georgian economy as positive, and 5% even assess it as very positive. Only 11% of economists surveyed in the second quarter of 2023 assess the impact of the war as negative, and none of them assess it as very negative. The surveyed experts were also asked to assess the decision of the National Bank of Georgia, announced on 10th May of 2023, to loosen its monetary policy and decrease the policy rate by half percentage points from 11% to 10.5%. Of note, until this decision, the NBG had kept the rate unchanged at 11% since March 2022. Almost all of the surveyed economists, 90%, either completely agree, 37%, or agree, 53%, with the NBG's decision. None of those surveyed completely disagree with the NBG's decision. Following the recent failure of the U.S.'s regional banks, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic, and the acquisition of Credit Suisse, the surveyed economists were asked to assess the impact of these global shock waves of uncertainty across global financial markets on the Georgian economy. More than half, 63% of respondents, expect that this recent turmoil in the global banking sector will have only a minor impact on the Georgian economy. Some economists, 16%, believe that these events could have at least a moderate impact, and 10% think they will not have any impact at all on the Georgian economy. More in Georgia's economy this week in our brief overview.
According to Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili, the government refrains from naming the investor who expressed interest in the construction of Anaklia port. Garibashvili made the above statement while presenting his annual report to the parliament. Regarding the port of Anaklia, I have repeatedly stated that the government has made a decision and the construction of port will begin this year with government funding. 51% will be owned by the government. We have announced an expression of interest for the rest. These issues are being actively processed. Interest has been expressed from a serious investor. However, at this stage, we are not in a position to make this information public. I will get back to you on this later. I want to tell you that a decision has been made that this year we will start construction, and gradually at the same time we will continue negotiations with investors, said Garibashvili. The GDP growth rate amounted to 7% for May 2023 year-over-year, and the average real GDP growth for January-May 2023 equaled 7.5%, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia, GEOSTAT. As of the document, in May 2023, compared to the same period of the previous year, the estimated real growth in the following activities contributed significantly: construction, information and communication, trade, transportation, storage, financial and insurance activities. Decline were registered in manufacturing and real estate activities. Renovation of Abastumani, a small town and climatic spa in southwestern Georgia's Samtskhe-Javakheti region, will be fully completed in 2025, Georgian Economy Minister Levan Davitashvili said on Thursday during his visit to the location to inspect works on its infrastructure. Inspecting the efforts together with Infrastructure Minister Irakli Karaseladze, the Ministry of Economy cited Davitashvili as saying most of the construction works had been completed, with surface works on the objects under the renovation set to start in the near future. The operation of the main infrastructure and hotels will begin at the end of the next year, and in the 2025 season the resort will be completely ready to host both local and international tourists in a fully renovated form in accordance with the modern standards and with taking high ecological requirements into account, he said. The rehabilitation of Baghdati-Abastumani Road and construction of Abastumani Bypass Road is also in an active phase, the ministry said. A lot will depend on Georgia. The implementation of the recommendations will be the key for the European Council to make a decision regarding Georgia at the end of the year, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, told journalists before the start of EU Leaders Summit in Brussels. As Charles Michel pointed out, they welcome the recent steps taken by Georgia. As for Georgia, we welcome the recent steps taken by Georgia and we will do everything to support Georgia's efforts, but we will see what will be in the report after the summit. A lot will depend on Georgia. The implementation of recommendations will be the key for the European Council to make a decision regarding Georgia at the end of the year, said Charles Michel. The National Environment Agency has released a statement outlining monitoring plans for Black Sea water quality. The agency states that monitoring of water quality will be conducted once every 10 days at the 9 designated stations. Upon completion of the research, the agency will report to the findings promptly. The research will focus on determining key chemical parameters of seawater, including salinity, biogenic elements, and other relevant indicators. Collected samples will be sent to the Air, Water and Soil Analysis Laboratory of National Environment Agency. This laboratory adheres to modern requirements and standards. Equipped with highly precise analytical instruments, the laboratory is accredited under ISO. The results obtained from the laboratory will be promptly shared with the public, the statement reads. During a municipal government meeting, Tbilisi Mayor Kakhakaladze announced that the Peace Bridge in central Tbilisi would be renovated. Damage to the concrete surface of the pair on Tquaris left banks triggered the need for rehabilitation, Kaladze explained. The bridge will be closed while the stairwells and lighting systems are renovated. The renovation will cost $1,400,000 lari and is expected to be completed in August. Zonal hourly parking system will be launched on several more streets of the capital from October 1, said Mayor of Tbilisi Kakhakaladze, as he mentioned at the municipal government meeting. Zonal hourly parking is free for local residents, persons with disabilities, electric car owners and A-category taxi drivers. Parking in zonal hourly parking areas is free for local residents, persons with disabilities, electric car owners and A-category taxi drivers. In other cases, the cost of this standard tariff is unchanged and amounts to 1 lari for 1 hour. Also, let us remind you that the citizen can use the first 15 minutes free of charge at 4 different locations during a day, said Kakhakaladze. According to him, from October 1, zonal hourly parking will be launched on the following streets: in Chugureti district, Ivani Javakhishvili Street, Saarbrücken Square, Ninoshvili and Uznadze streets and surrounding area; in Tatsminda district, Lapiashvili Street, Chovelidze and Janashia streets and surrounding area; in the Waka region, the area around the Turtle Lake Turn.
And on to Natia Taktakishvili to sum up weekly business news and outlook for us. The Swiss fund got interested in the project of Pioli Wellness Cottages. According to the founder of Pioli, Tamas Chedlidze, the project includes 20 cottages which would be located on the territory of Pioli. As Tamas Chedlidze told BMWG, the cottages will be given under a 50-year ownership right to the new owner. According to the founder of Pioli, the project combines not only real estate but also a healthy lifestyle. We are planning to build 20 villas and the Swiss fund is already interested in 7 cottages, Chedlidze said, and expressed his hope that the parties will cooperate. Pioli Wellness Cottages will cost from $900,000 USD to $2.5 million USD. Tamas Chedlidze started organizing the wellness resort Pioli in 2005 in order to create a healthy life industry in the country, for which he has already invested $24 million USD. Chateau Mukhrani is expanding the number of exporting countries. As the company's brand manager Teona Tabatadze and logistic manager Boris Vashakidze said, the company is slowly entering Asia and US markets. According to Teona Tabatadze, Chateau Mukhrani has attended the Seoul exhibition for the first time this year, noting that more than 35,000 people visit the event annually. As of her, the Asian market was in their main focus during this
this exhibition. In Asia, there is a great interest in Georgian wine, especially in Georgian Qvevri wine. We will see more Georgian wine in Seoul soon. We are slowly entering the markets of Asia and America, said Teona Tabatadze. According to Boris Vashakidze, Chateau Mukhrani received the status of an authorized economic operator. As the company representative notes, the mentioned status gives Chateau Mukhrani certain benefits in the direction of customs service. This status opens a corridor in the EU countries as well. A new tourist facility, Shale Quirike, is preparing to receive gas in the village of Quirike, Kobuleti municipality. Pata Dumbadze, general director of Chateau Quirike, notes that the project is fully unique as the facility is located in Quirike Mountains at 1,050 meters above the sea level and 12 kilometers away from the sea. According to Dumbadze, 20 million lari was invested in the facility, of which 5 million was co-financed by the enterprise Georgia. As the director of Shale Quirike notes, the tourist space is intended for both local and foreign tourists. This project equally attracts both segments. As you know, Ajara region is a very popular tourist area, and we are not only proud of the sea, we also have mountains which should be enjoyed by both local residents and foreign tourists, says Pata Dumbadze. The tourist facility has from 80% to 100% load in July-August. Quirike also has in advance bookings for September-October. Shale Quirike combines the main hotel building, 15 themed cottages, a private villa and a restaurant, a conference space, a winery and wine cellar. The complex is built on 6 hectares and was opened a few years ago. Company agro-product manufacturer of Getilda Patiosani fruit juices will launch a new production line soon, which includes manufacturing of sauces. The new product will be presented on the market under the brand Poporelli. The managing partner of the company, Soso Manjavidze, says that they collected recipes of traditional Georgian sauces from all over the country, financed the expedition with personal funds, involved gastro experts and chefs, and as a result they got such different sauces as cherry sauce, a mixture of beetroot and plum, green and red pepper sauces, and so on. The company specifies that the production of Poporelli line will start on the basis of the old production capacities. Therefore, they did not need additional financial resources in this regard. As for production, the company says that in the first stage, they plan to produce 1 million bottles per year, which will be sold in local retail chains, and in the future, this amount will increase. A new Stepin hotel was opened in Khazbegi, Stepantsminda, with a foreign investment of €2 million. According to Ani Ali Begashvili, founder of Stepin Hotel, they attracted investment from Germany and Poland. The 5-story hotel combines 19 rooms of different types, a conference space for 30 people, a spa center with a pool and a sauna. The newly opened hotel employs 20 people, although it's planned to gradually increase the number of employees to 40 people. The managers of the hotel are expecting guests from both Europe and Eastern countries. As for the cost of accommodation, Ani Ali Begashvili says that the cost of the room will depend on its size and the hotel load. The cost of accommodation ranges from 300 lari to 600 lari for 2 people. The price includes breakfast as well, Ani Ali Begashvili said. The Georgian company Art Glass Studio, located in Batumi, is planning to increase its production due to the demand growth. Mariam Shavadze, co-founder of the enterprise, notes that the number of orders in the enterprise increases by 30% in 2022 compared to 2021. At this stage, we have fully utilized the Batumi market. We received a lot of orders from Tbilisi as well. We also have private orders from abroad, says Mari Shavadze. According to her, the idea of opening an enterprise existed for years, but its implementation became possible in 2018 with the micro grants program of Enterprise Georgia. As the representative of the company told BMWG, the company obtained funding of 20,000 lari under the condition of 20% participation. With this grant, they purchased special machines and started production. As for the prices, according to the representative of the enterprise, the average cost of 1 square meter starts from 900 lari. Teko Tukhashvili, marketing manager of the tourist facility Shale Quarriati, declares that the facility was rather loaded last year compared to the June. As she notes, interest has been higher on Booking.com, Airbnb, as well as on the local rental sites, but all activities are stopped after the warning on the water pollution due to the Russia's destruction of hydroelectric power station in Ukraine. All reservations are slowly cancelled. Since our hotel has a different concept from other seaside resorts, we have kept the vacationers. Shale Quarriati has cottages in the mountains of Quarriati. We are not dissatisfied, but this incident affected the number of local and foreign tourists, says Teko Tukhashvili. Shale Quarriati is a tourist complex consisting of 3 cottages. According to Teko Tukhashvili, each cottage has 2 isolated bedrooms, a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and recreation space for common activities. The cost of one night depends on the season and ranges from 350 lari to 400 lari.
Last week, the chief technology officer of Tether, the issuer of the largest stablecoin USDT with a market capitalization of 84 billion USD, visited Georgia. BMG's Business Evening anchors Georgi Aronian and Georgi Tolordava talked to Paolo Arduino about Tether's Georgian investments, the company's liquidity, and the stability of the market. Let's watch the interview.
Hi there. Today we'll be talking about crypto with Tether's Chief Technology Officer, Paolo Arduino. Tether is one of the biggest crypto projects, cryptocurrencies in the world, the biggest stablecoin with a market cap of 84 billion USD. Hi, Paolo. It's a pleasure to have you here in Georgia and at BMG to discuss about Tether's involvement in the Georgian crypto industry and in general Tether's plans and goals.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and I must say that I really love your country. So unfortunately we are staying here only for a few days. We came on late Sunday, and the food, the wine, but also the culture, the people smiling, young guys always flooding the streets. We went in different co-working spaces. You could see like the culture of innovation, the really talented boys and girls that were spending all their time till really late in night in trying to start up their own adventure. That is, I'm Italian. That is one of the things that I think we are missing in Central Europe. That is one of the things that I think my country, for example, has lost. So when I came here, I saw this beautiful city in Tbilisi. When I saw the environment, I was, wow.
Well, thank you very much for your words. It's very nice to hear when a foreign person discusses and describes Georgia in such words. Paolo, let's jump into the topics of our interview. As I just mentioned in the introduction, market cap of Tether is 84 billion USD. So my first question would be, what does Tether do in Georgia? So what is the purpose of your visit?
Yes, so Tether is kind of a simple idea. Is a cryptocurrency that is called the stablecoin. But differently from all the other cryptocurrencies, the working model of Tether is to remain pegged to the dollar, to the US dollar. That is USDT, that is the most popular stablecoin and one of the most popular cryptocurrencies in the world. Tether started in 2014 with this simple idea. Let's reuse this brilliant technology that Bitcoin created, but let's put a dollar on top of it, because the reality is that in many places in the world, especially emerging countries, there is a lot of need to access the dollar. Fast forward many years, in 2023, Tether grew to almost $84 billion today. It has been a really interesting ride. The way Tether changed is to become the currency of the people that are that don't have access to that doesn't have access to fair access to financial services. So we are seeing enormous growth in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Lebanon, in Turkey, and so on. And Georgia, in a way, is much better positioned, I think, from an inflation and the devaluation of their national currency point of view, right, than many of these countries. So, but here in Georgia, we have seen, as I said before, a different need, in my opinion. Like I was walking in the streets of Tbilisi, and I could see the Tatar sign almost everywhere, right? So, and it happened before we came here, right? So we are not here to sell anything. We are not here to ask for anything apart how we can help, right? So what we can do. Seems like the community here is trusting our products anyway, and so it's only fair from our point of view to try to come here, ask how we can help, invest in maybe startups, provide some capital. We don't want to, we don't have the arrogance to come here and start building things ourselves. We want to be part of the culture. Recently, we invested in one of the most prominent startups that you have, is called CityPay. They are providing cryptocurrency payment services. They are a great team. I'm sure they will be able to grow in Georgia, but also internationally. That is, I think that is the ambition, right? Growing on a really large scale and represent one of the best unicorns that Georgia can have. So we want to repeat this approach, listen to people, talk to entrepreneurs, talk to developers that are building something cool, and then provide them the resources, the expertise to expand globally.
Let's talk about your investment into CityPay in more detail. My first question would be, could you share some details, maybe valuation, sort of investment, and then expand on what is the purpose of the investment? So what are your joint goals together with CityPay?
So we invested on a variable valuation up to $15 million. Our entry point was like lower. We invested just before the round. The last round, and the reason of the investment is that most of these businesses are capital intensive, right? And we want them to focus on what it matters. That is the usability of the product, that is already great, but you can always fine tune it. And the business development, right? It is important to have a group of people that help you to explain the product to the merchants, right? You have to go to a merchant that has maybe a shop, might be a young guy, but might be an older person. And so it's important that this technology is not only being used by the younger generations. It's about inclusion, right? So everyone should understand it or not be afraid of it. Because it has tremendous potential. So when you want to scale, is important to have cash in hand so you can make the right investments. And of course, we are not stopping here, right? So when we invest in a company, we partner in a company, we are there for the future. For us, it's not marketing, right? So we are the type of people that you can count on for follow-up rounds, capital injection, advisory, and so on and so forth.
So basically strategic partnership.
Yes.
Right? Okay, let me ask my last question, and then we'll move on. Are you planning to invest in any other Georgian startups? How do you see the ecosystem in general?
When in just these few days, we met with a couple of startups that I think have really big potential, and that's, of course, we are in super early stages in discussion. One is related to education. That is one of the topics in my heart. I think if I was not doing this job, I would be a teacher. They are already providing online and offline courses. They have the ability to expand even farther here in Georgia. They are quite prominent already, but they can keep growing also outside of Georgia. And that is what I like, the ambition of creating something that is global, that unifies people, and education unifies people. And also a few other opportunities that we are meeting around today. We have a couple other meetings, but we will be here more often. Of course, we hired local people already that will be our highs and years here, because it's a continuous process. You never know when the next opportunity will come.
Paulo, let's move on the regulatory side. So back in January, National Bank of Georgia adopted a law about digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and so on. And recently, they also adopted a new regulation about VASP registration process. How knowledgeable are you about this regulation, and has Tether been involved in the consultation process in any ways?
So I'm pretty familiar with the different regulatory frameworks around the world. So one of the obvious events that will happen in the next months and years is the increased regulatory scrutiny that will happen around the world, not just in Georgia, right? So I live for a part of my time in Switzerland. There is FINMA, that is the regulator there, that started regulating cryptocurrencies already in 2014. In Europe, I'm Italian, so in Europe I'm familiar with the MiCA license. That is the license that will, starting from mid-2024, will provide the regulatory framework for both cryptocurrencies, stable coins, but also virtual asset service providers, VASPs. It will come. Regulations are, in general, a good thing because they are providing a framework to protect the end user, right? So we have seen how things went wrong in 2022, and so it's fair that governments are looking how to regulate this technology. But it's important when we talk with regulators to explain them that over-regulation is not the way to go, right? This is the technology that have the possibility of revolutionizing the financial business, but not only, right? Also logistics, also music.
Information transfer.
Exactly. Intellectual property and so on. So from our perspective, that is what we're always trying to gather to the regulator. So we're not part of the consultations here in Georgia, but we would always be happy to be.
All right. My next question is about also the National Bank of Georgia, which is currently developing its own CBDC, digital banks, central bank national currency, and some of the international companies are currently involved in the developing process. Is Tether one of them?
We are not currently involved in that process.
All right. So what's your general take on the CBDCs? How would you describe them, and what's Tether's position about CBDCs? Could this be a threat to crypto industry and stable coins in general?
So if you allow me a couple of minutes, I will give you a broader answer, because I think this is really important. So first of all, I come being the voice of Tether. We are not afraid of CBDCs for our business model. We think that the CBDCs and our products can coexist. The issue that we have, or that in general the public have with CBDCs, is the risk that it could be used to further control the people, right? So is the lack of or loss of privacy. Right now, you can choose your bank. You have a credit card from your bank, or you have an app, and your transaction, you buy coffee, you buy like a nice meal, and the transaction remains only with the bank of your choice. But with a CBDC, would be the first time that the central bank will see all the transactions of all the citizens. So the CBDC, in theory, is designed to replace cash. The cash is private, right? You want to give something to your friend, you want to buy a coffee, you can do that through cash. And cash has been used for the entire history, almost the entire history of, or recent history of humanity. And so that is the first time that, that people will lose their privacy in such an important way. But on the other side, there are risks also for, with the CBDC from the banking point of view. I was part in different meetings with different central banks around the world, and they all have a common concern. And the concern is that a CBDC could completely kill the banking industry. So, because the CBDC will be something issued by the central bank and will end up in the pockets of the citizens. So then why you need a bank, right? So, and so is kind of a 5D chess game where if you do that, like you know, a butterfly moves its wings here, and what happens in 10 years somewhere else, right? So what if a CBDC will be heavily adopted? How you can predict how the financial ecosystem will change, and maybe will change in better, maybe not, because also banks are employing a lot of people. So what is the future of these people, these employed people? So that is one of the risks. The second risk is, and slightly more technical, is the interest rates. Right now, with cash, you don't have positive or negative interest rates. So, of course, you have inflation that is kind of embedded negative interest rate, but yes, but you know, if you give a CBDC, then if you apply a negative interest rate, right, in Europe, right, to hold until 2 years ago, to hold dollars in a bank.
Yeah, it was negative.
Exactly. Now, of course, it's positive. But then, if you have a CBDC, you are going to apply an interest. But if you a negative interest, but if you are going to apply a negative interest, when it turns positive, you are going to apply a positive interest rate. So it's really hard to decide and predict, and risk to really upset the people. So what I'm saying is that we are talking to many central banks that want to issue their CBDC. They want to look cool because others are doing it. It's a matter of pride and technological pride, and I
China
understand
is leading the charge.
But China did it in a way that has a different way to do things, like a bit more aggressive in the approach. More democratic countries might have harder times to introduce a CBDC.
Paolo, you just mentioned that CBDCs are not a threat to Tether's business model. I want to expand on that. Could you explain how Tether generates income to our audience, and is the issuance of the stablecoin the only purpose that your company serves?
Absolutely. So Tether works in a simple way. A customer sends us $100,000. We have a minimum threshold just to ensure that we can do the highest level due diligence on the customers. So send $100,000, we send back 100,000 USDT. That is simple process. When this person takes 100,000 USDT, trades or buy things, distribute them, and so on. Then people come back to us, they want the money back, they send us back the tokens, we wire back their money, right? Pretty simple approach. During the period when we have the money, and this moment is almost $84 billion, with that money is in our portfolio. With our portfolio, we take really simple steps to ensure that the company remains healthy and profitable, to protect all Tether users. In this moment, having $84 billion, of which the majority are invested in US Treasury bills, it yields 5% per year. It's a lot of money, right? You can easily make up to $34 billion in this environment per year, doing the simplest of the jobs, because we invest also in short-term US Treasury bills, like 3 months is our maximum. So it means that you have always the highest level of liquidity and convertibility in the dollar, that is the underlying this currency that we have to give back to the users, but also we can accrue value in the company, that are profits. These profits in a classic VC company like Silicon Valley company would be distributed to the shareholders. The reality is, and is also the reason why we are here, the reality for us is that we are simple people, we are humble people. We don't have, we don't want to have crazy things for us, right? So the most important, we are believers in the reason why cryptocurrency world started. So we are taking the majority of these profits that today are around 30 billion in just 1 year. And we want to invest them in companies, in environments that follow the same philosophy of decentralization, of innovation, and so on and so forth. In El Salvador, recently we participated to a $1 billion energy infrastructure building, for example. In Uruguay, the same. We invested tens of millions of dollars in energy infrastructure. We are investing tens of millions of dollars in startups and all around the world. For us, that's what matters, right? So we don't have to squeeze the last cent from this company. It's really the most important thing we can do is to make this company not only a stable coin, but something bigger.
Before we move into reserves, let me just clarify, $1 billion in last fiscal year? You mean
we
profit?
made almost $3 billion in the last 16 months, pretty much.
Okay, all right. So I would like to expand on the reserve side. How much cash, liquid cash, do we hold currently?
That's a great question. So you would imagine, right, the simple concept would be people give you cash and you have to keep cash sitting in the bank. The reality thing is that trying to go to Bank of Georgia, for example, and tell them, I want to keep $83 billion in cash in your bank.
That's not possible.
Exactly, that is not possible. The only thing you can do is to hold assets that represent the dollar, that is the currency that we have to pay back. That's why we picked the US Treasury bills, because they are representing of the US dollar, and they are short term, that they are highly liquid. The turnover daily is $500 billion, basically.
They are the safest
exactly.
investment product on the market.
Exactly. Also, and look, one of our competitors made a mistake of keeping $3.3 billion in Silicon Valley Bank, right?
Yeah.
And the issue with the cash, so you cannot keep cash in the bank because the cash doesn't want, the bank doesn't want you to keep the cash. But even further, let's say that you could keep like 10% of your money in pure cash. If the bank goes bankrupt, that cash is on balance sheet, so will be dragged into bankruptcy. If you hold UST bills, they are securities, so they will be returned. So we are taking the safest approach that anyone can take. We are not leveraged. We are over-collateralized because we have around $84 billion in market cap plus $3 billion in additional reserves. That is much more than any bank in the world would have because banks usually do fractional reserve.
Paulo, let me expand on that because when we were discussing and researching for the interview, we basically had this idea that Tether acts in a way as a commercial bank, as a central bank, and as a payment service provider at the same time. You know, basically because all the infrastructure you have allows for all three of those things. At the same time, we came around the report by BDO, the consolidated report, and here, as you rightly mentioned, the biggest part is in U.S. Treasury bills. 53 billion by that time, but also we see some other assets, for instance, as precious metals and all that. So considering that you know, we have money market funds, we have non-U.S. Treasury bills, let's expand a little bit more about the structure. You know, so you mentioned that it is liquid, but is it as liquid as so that it can safeguard you from, for example, some sort of bank run that Tether can have?
Sure. This is another really important question that I think owes a detailed response. So Tether in this moment have, as you said, around 56 billion now is more, 56 billion in direct ownership of USD bills. The money market funds are actually the majority of their investment is still in T-bills, but you have to do a look through, right? So usually we want to show the right categorization to our users, but if you sum all these assets, 85% of all our assets are in cash and cash equivalent, means that they are deemed by regulators as pure liquidity. Then on top of that, we have 4% of our holdings in gold. Gold has around $12 trillion market cap, is extremely liquid, and is the thing that humanity used for the last 10,000 years for payments, right? So the reason why we have a small investment in gold is the protection against hedge cases, right? So we are seeing how geopolitics are changing in the world, and I think we owe to our users a little bit of diversification, not much, right? So if you look at, for example, the funds, even the most regulated funds, even money market funds, can have a small portion in gold, right? So, and also we have 1.8% in Bitcoin, but that 1.8% in Bitcoin is in this moment, or at the moment the attestation was around $1.5 billion. That was smaller than our company profits. So we invested less. So it's not that Bitcoin is backing up the reserves. Bitcoin is part of our profits that we are keeping in the company because we are believers in Bitcoin. And if whatever happens in the future, if Bitcoin appreciated, these Bitcoins are there still in the company. We didn't take it out as dividends to protect further the company and its users.
Let me clarify before we move to different points. So the $3 billion you mentioned includes the appreciation of the assets that you hold, including Bitcoin,
Absolutely.
precious metals, all of that.
Yes.
Okay.
So is mark to market $3 billion more.
Okay, and just to clarify one more point, is a bank run or some sort of bank run a risk for Tether at all?
So I really like this question because it's not anymore hypothetical, my answer is facts. Last year, I'm sure you're familiar with what happened in the cryptocurrency industry. Terra Luna started, that was like an algorithmic stablecoin that was a really badly designed stablecoin. Then there was Celsius, FTX, Voyager,
and so on.
Yeah, Genesis Trading,
About
many
10
other.
or 15 casualties.
Yeah,
large
yeah.
casualties.
Tens of billions of dollars of damage. A group of traders, like publicly, or you can find information on Bloomberg, you can find information on Financial Times, publicly said they wanted to short Tether below $1 to cause a bank run, to prove to the world that Tether was not solid enough. And Tether, so they started borrowing USDT at 12% interest rate from lenders. Some of these lenders are the ones that, by the way, failed. So in a way, it's kind of poetic. But anyway, they started borrowing this USDT and sell them below par, right, below $1 on secondary market, right? They went on Binance, Kraken, and so on. They start selling below par. So why they did that? If you sell USDT below par, a market maker will buy the cheap USDT at 99 cents and will send them to us, redeem them for $1, send the dollars back to the trading platform, and do this in a loop. They make 1% profit. I mean, is on
and it's a great business decision. I mean, like if you're trading.
Exactly, and it's quite simple, right? And why? And also the other reason they did that is an asymmetric bet. It means that if you short a stable coin, if you're lucky, you make money. If you're unlucky, worst case it goes back to 1. Cannot go, if you short Tesla, it can go to 2,000, right?
Yeah.
If you short a stable coin, it will remain to 1. So they took an asymmetric bet. They tried to prove that our company had problems. In 48 hours, we redeemed, so less than 2 days, also 48 hours, but it's like 16 working hours, we were able to redeem $7 billion. That was 10% of our reserves. In 20 days, we redeemed more than $20 billion. That was 25% of our reserves, and we could have kept going. And that is the reason why now that many banks failed, especially in the US, Tether USDT grew and absorbed most of the other stablecoins, because people are seeing that they can trust us. We have proved to be more solid than any other bank. There is a case in 2008, was Washington Mutual Bank. They were subject to a bank run for 10% of the reserves. They went bankrupt because they are heavily leveraged. We are not.
Yeah, so they tried to pull off Soros-like short-selling strategy, but they failed miserably. Let's expand on the failing stages. I mean, like, how did the Terra Luna and also FTX collapse change the industry?
I think, first of all, it's saddening to see that an industry that started with the ideal of changing the financial world made the same mistakes of what we have seen in 2007, 2008. So that of course is not a great look. That also is why regulators that had already in the plans to regulate the industry, now they are taking harsher steps. And we cannot blame them, right? In the end, this industry is made by humans, and humans are taking sometimes stupid decisions, unfortunately. But I think, in a way, what last year, 2022, proved to people is the fact that people shouldn't focus on this industry for speculation, right? Or make money in trading is fine if you are a good trader, if you study, if you learn. Traders are extremely profitable, but is not an easy job. It's not a job that you can do on your phone when you walk around, between jobs. It's not that. So for everyone else, they should understand the technology, they should learn it, but also they should understand the history behind the technology and why it's important, why it's helping so many people around the world, why there are companies like us that are embracing it and they are trying to educate the generations around it.
Well, Paolo, thank you very much for the interview. We touched upon Georgia, international topics as well. We really hope that the next time you are here, we can expand even further about different topics. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. It was really a nice interview.
And that's all for today. We will meet on Sunday next week. But before that, all you need on business and economics, you can find on our website, bm.j. See you soon.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.